This is the place where NFL legends live on and share their stories. This is the place for our Spotlight on the Positive segment, sharing what's good in the world of sports. This is also the place for the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. This place I speak of, Thursday Night Tailgate. Let's say hello to your hosts, Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari. Guys, take it away.
Hey, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate, your home for interviews and insights from some of the greatest players in the history of the NFL. Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari here to hopefully brighten up the next couple of hours for you. TNT, we are brought to you by the great folks over at Kyvan Foods, the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, the Salt Creek Golf Retreat up in beautiful Nashville, Indiana, our friends over at Tops and our partners over at the NFL Alumni Association and Mike Ditka's organization, the Gridiron Greats, who we love, by the way. Check them out online at gridirongreats.org. Tonight, Bob and I, we are going to welcome one new rookie to the show. We've got three great returning guests that we're looking forward to catching up with. Plus, we'll cross over into baseball and get some thoughts from one of our beloved Red Sox. And in fact, that's how we're going to kick off the show tonight. We'll be joined by one of our great friends over the last several years, and both on this show and on a baseball show that Bob and I did for several years called View from the Lone Red Seats, where we talked to all things Red Sox with our good friend Dave Radigan. But over the years, we've been honored to be joined by Red Sox legend Rico Petrocelli, and we look forward to talking with Rico tonight. He'll join us about 15 minutes from now. Following Rico will be former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. He'll be here in his regular weekly time slot. About 45 minutes from now, we'll get a return visit from former Jets and Broncos defensive back Nick Ferguson. Then we'll kick off hour number 2 with a return visit from former Dolphins and Rams tight end Randy McMichael. And then we'll round out the show with a visit from former Bucs Center Randy Grimes, who has an amazing story, folks, by the way, about what led him to and how he was able to come back from painkiller addiction, right? He had substance abuse problems for years, but was able to kick that, and he's come back now, and he's actually helping folks, that have similar problems that he went through. So what a great story that is, and we'll catch up with Randy about 90 minutes from now. So a lot of great guests and a lot of great stories coming your way tonight. We can't thank you enough for tuning in and taking the journey with Bob and I over the next couple of hours. But we'll kick off the show by bringing in the aforementioned Mr. Bob Lazzari. Bob, how are you tonight, my friend?
Hi, Chris. I'm well. How about yourself?
No, fantastic. Thank you. A little technical difficulty to start the show. The new microphone, Bob, works for while we were off the air, and then as soon as we went on the air, it cut right out. So anyway, we shake and dance, and we do a little hokey pokey and turn ourselves about. But here we are, and away we go. Yeah. So, Bob, before we get into our Bob's Take segment, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your show on the TV side, Monday Night Sports Talk, along with our good friend Tony D'Angelo. Who have you guys had? Who you got coming up?
We did a show the other night, Chris. We had former Major Leaguer Jack Perconti. Very interesting guy. Played 8 seasons in the big leagues. If you remember, 1984 Seattle Mariners was pretty much when he really hit his stride. 184 hits. He stole 30 bases, but was one of those guys, kind of a throwback type utility guy his whole career, Chris, and did the little things to get by. Only hit 2 home runs his entire career, but you could see how he stayed in the majors for as much as he did. He's big into instruction now for both players and coaches, and we had a lot of fun talking with him. So our next scheduled show is supposed to be Labor Day night, so we can't do that. So we're back around mid-September, and then we'll start making the transition to football. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And remind our listeners, Bob, how they can go find you guys, on your YouTube channel, online, and then stay up to date with all the great things you've done. And plus, you've had a ton of great interviews in the past, and those that they can stream as well.
Well, that's the deal, Chris. We're going to be stopping the live shows at the end of this year, but we're building up that website because we've only touched the surface as to many we've done over the 10-year stretch. But Monday Night Sports 14 on YouTube, that's the one we're going to start getting a lot more of the interviews that we did in the past that didn't get up there of pro athletes in the past. So, yeah, that's your best bet. MondayNightSports.net is still up and running, but YouTube, Monday Night Sports 14, that's your bread and butter right there.
There you go. Great stuff. A lot of great shows out there and a lot of great guests and interviews. Highly recommend it. So go check it out.
It's time for another edition of Bob's Take. So, Bob, tell us, what's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, let's get into our Bob's Take segment for this week. And, Bob, the first thing I want to get your thoughts on tonight is Herschel Walker and his place in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I say Pro Football Hall of Fame because that's what it is, right? It's not just the regular NFL Hall of Fame. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And, Bob, if you look at Herschel Walker's time in the NFL, rushed for 8,225 yards, good for 43rd all time. So not Hall of Fame numbers by any stretch. But if you add in his rushing yards, and just his rushing, we're not talking about all the things he did also on special teams and his all-purpose yards, which we can get into if you want. But just if you take those, the rushing yards that he had in the USFL, he added 5,562 more yards there. So if you added that all up, you get 13,787, which now is good for 5th all time on the rushing list. And let's not forget, the single season rushing mark that he added, with the New Jersey Generals. He rushed for 2,411 yards, Bob, 300 more yards than Eric Dickerson's NFL record. So, Bob, what's your take? Should Herschel Walker be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
I think it's a no-brainer. He belongs, Chris. I remember meeting him in person the year he was getting out of Georgia, Chris. I had an interview at NBC downtown New York City, and he was in the building, and he came out with a few bodyguards or just guys that were representing him, whatever, coming out. And I'm saying to myself, this guy was about 6'1", 220 pounds, 225, and I could not get over his size as far as the width of his chest and the fact that this guy could run like the wind. And I said, this guy, just knowing what I know, what he just did at Georgia, is going to be an incredible pro. Now, he went into the USFL, Chris. If you remember those days, he was that was a man playing among boys at such a young age. He was incredible at that level. And then, of course, he brought it to the NFL, where he did not have to be the showpiece like he did, but he played very well. His first year with Dallas, I think he averaged 5 yards per carry. But it was, and I'll bring in all that other stuff you talked about, Chris, because people don't realize how incredibly gifted he was as a receiver. He had a few years, I believe, Chris, I was looking today, a few years where he caught more than 75 passes out of the backfield, which is crazy. You remember at the end they were lining him up all over the place. And then, of course, he ran back kicks and did that very well. And then I think they tried to save his body a little bit but he did it all, Chris. And like I said, you're right. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I don't think there's any question if he had played those years in the NFL when he was not playing in the USFL, he would have put up incredible numbers and would have been well over 10,000 yards. But the total amount of work that he did at both venues, it's a no-brainer that guy's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Bob. And, the thing it's always been intriguing. I wish someone would have taken a flyer, right? Because Herschel's the guy that's, been saying for years that he could still play. And, oh, by the way, he's in his 50s. Right? He could still play, right? I read an article when I was, doing a little research on this topic as well that said last year he ran a 4.340. Right? I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, Herschel's just a freak of nature. There's no, people talk about Adrian Peterson now as a guy who's a freak of nature. Well, Herschel certainly predates him by a couple of decades, and what a freak of nature that he's been. And I get that, NFL teams, they don't want to make a circus of the NFL and all that sort of stuff. But he had offered, I think he'd raised his hand a couple of times. Like, yeah, I think I could still play. Right? I wish someone would have taken a flyer on him, even if it was just a team that was sort of out of it, towards the end of the season, right? And just to see what he could still do, because, he's in phenomenal shape. And we all, people may not remember the fact that he was on the U.S. bobsled team as a pusher, for the bobsled team, and, just the fantastic shape that Herschel has just maintained to this day is unbelievable. And I would have loved to have seen, you remember back in the day, right, Bob? Jim Brown always had talked about how he thought he could come back, and there was that talk with the Raiders that he might make a comeback in the 80s and that sort of thing. I wish, both guys would have had an opportunity to do so. I wish someone would have taken a flyer on them. But I agree with you that Herschel definitely belongs in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, you're at about 5,000 yards for kick returns, 5,000 yards for receiving, and over 8,000 in the rushing. That's just the NFL. And that right there is Hall of Fame worthy. And if you just throw 3 other professional years, again, it's not even a question on my mind.
Yeah, agreed. Bob, one of the other things I want to get your thoughts on tonight is we learned this week the Broncos have announced that former 7th-round draft pick Trevor Siemian is going to be their starting quarterback this year over first-round pick Paxton Lynch. And you look at Lynch, and this is going to be his second season in the NFL. And if you're not going to start your rookie year, I think most teams expect that a first-round pick is going to be the starter in year 2. Except if you're Aaron Rodgers and you're backing up Hall of Famer Brett Favre. But when you look at a guy that you've spent a first-round draft pick on, right, versus a guy that you drafted, sort of, oh, by the way, in the 7th round. I mean, that talent has emerged, and taken nothing away from Trevor Siemian. But you look at Lynch, and you would think that he's probably going to be the guy. If you're investing a first round pick in him, he's probably going to be the guy. If not in year 1, certainly by year 2. And now that's not going to be the case, at least at the start of the season. So, Bob, what's your take on the quarterback situation in Denver and where Paxton Lynch goes from here?
Well, this is an interesting situation, Chris, because I think you're right on. Everyone thought no matter what happened last year that Lynch would definitely be the man here. Watching for a year always helps a lot of these young quarterbacks. But bottom line, from what I heard, Chris, what people have told me, Siemian basically just beat him out in the whether it's been in the off-season workouts or so far. Definitely in the preseason. And Vance Joseph, the coach, is very, very candid about it. He said, this is all about performance. It's not about somebody's potential. So he's talking right to Lynch, saying that this guy beat you out. They're saying, a lot of people say Siemian just is a very, very even-keeled, Chris, compared to the other guy. Now, I don't know if that means Lynch is a little touchy with the media or things like that. Siemian, and it seems like everyone I talk to, Sue, thinks that the players are really behind this from his work last year. So they like him a lot. And I'm not going to call him just a controller of the game. I think he's got some skills. But what they're excited about, Chris, is that team that had no running game last year has kind of beefed it up. I'm not saying Jamal Charles is going to be the Jamal Charles of 5 years ago, but you have C.J. Anderson coming back, and he's been looking good. Stephen Ridley. They got a few other guys that they say they're looking very good in training camp, and you put that together with a couple good wide receivers. Why would you want to mess with a guy that took the most of the snaps last year? So that's where they're at right now. Lynch got beat out. And they're going with Siemian, and they're going to sink or swim with this guy. So Lynch's future, that's going to be interesting, Chris. I don't know if he has a future in Denver.
Yeah, and it is going to be interesting. You sort of layer on top of that, Bob, the news that we got earlier today about Deshaun Kaiser going to be the guy for the Cleveland Browns, right? Beating out Brock Osweiler. So you look at that, that Broncos quarterback situation. You go back, a little over a year, right? You got Osweiler. Who knows now what that means for Osweiler's future? I think Cleveland is going to be trying to make a deal, to get rid of him, to move him on, and then Lynch. Who knows what that means, for Lynch and his career now going forward. So. It's sort of going to be an interesting. I think the next couple of weeks is, whether guys, teams make moves, make trades, that sort of thing. I think it's going to be interesting to see where those two guys, if a move is made, where they might end up. One more, Bob, this week before we move on, and we learned that Roger Goodell is close to signing a 5-year contract extension that will have him there as commissioner through 2024. So what's your take? Is that a good thing for the league? It may be a great thing for the owners, but is it a good thing for the game and its immediate future?
That's a good thing for the owners and the league as far as finances, Chris. I mean, it's obvious this guy proven in the 10 years he's been there that the league is going to make money. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? I mean, on both perspectives. I mean, what we hear, you know, the going back and forth between disciplinary hearings and things like that, these are almost like tiny chapters in the whole thing, Chris. The whole thing is that the league is making incredible. I think they made $13-14 billion since he's been there. And that's all the owners need to say. I mean, you could talk about Jerry Jones not agreeing with what he's doing. That's strictly for your, you know, I'm sure Kraft was on him when they were doing the whole Tom Brady situation. Now you have Ezekiel Elliott, and you got Jerry Jones on. These are just, it's just, hey, Goodell's got to do what he's got to do, Chris. And you know, I think he's been pretty good. He's had some bad PR as far as some of these situations with the disciplinary stuff. And that comes down to this, Chris. I mean, these disciplinary stuff with like a Brady and Ezekiel Elliott, these guys are franchise players. And what's good for the NFL is good for franchise players, is good for owners. And Goodell's in a tough position. You know, he wants to continue making the good bucks, but he's got to have a little bit of public servantry here, shall we say. So, but yeah, I mean, this guy, I mean, he makes a fortune himself, Chris. I mean, I think he made $45 million 5 years ago, and now they're not even really publicizing his salary like they used to, but it's out of control. I mean, what he's making, but hey, for what he gets back to the league, he might be underpaid. But to answer your question, Chris, for the league and everything, he's great for the NFL as a whole. Let's put it that way. And why would the owners want to jeopardize that? And that's why they want to lock him up for another 7-8 years.
There you go. And that's our Bob's Take segment for this week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. We've got our first guest, Rico Petrocelli, hanging on the line. We'll get to Rico here in just a moment. And TNT, folks, you know we are sponsored by Kyvan Foods. NFL star Reggie Kelly brings the authentic flavor of traditional Southern cooking to market with his Kyvan Foods products. Made with the finest ingredients, Kyvan Foods invites you to appreciate the goodness of the exceptional flavors of their salsas, their sauces, their apple butter, and so many other fine products as well. Make Kyvan items a part of your tailgating spread, either at the game or at home gating with your family and friends. The taste, folks, is unbelievable. Fantastic. Let me tell you, we've had, the Kyvan salsa. I love hot food, right? The hot salsa is absolutely out of this world. I love it. I go through a jar every Sunday when I'm watching the games. You're going to find their products available online through Walmart.com and at select Kroger stores, or you can order online through Amazon or Kyvan's website itself at Kyvan82.com. And Kyvan is spelled Kyvan. Baseball season, right? We're turning towards the postseason. And if you love the game, you've got to go check out the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. They were inducted into the TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence Hall of Fame. The museum is a very cool experience for everybody in the family because you get to go walk their live production line and see some of the 1.8 million bats that they make each year, and they've been doing it now for 132 years. Don't miss the Bat Vault, where you can go in and hold actual game-used bats from so many of the game's greatest legends, guys like Ted Williams, my hero growing up, Willie Stargell. To find out more information about the museum and to book your visit, go to sluggermuseum.com. And we're also proud to be sponsored by our good friend and Thursday Night Tailgate Hall of Famer Randy McMichael and the great folks up at the Salt Creek Golf Retreat in Nashville, Indiana, which, oh, by the way, was voted one of the top 20 small towns in the country by Smithsonian Magazine. Let's hear a word from our announcer, Joe LaGenusa, about Salt Creek Golf Retreat and what a great place that it is.
If you're looking for a great place for your annual golf outing, a weekend golf getaway, or just a round of golf with your buddies, then Salt Creek Golf Retreat is just what you're looking for. Centrally located in Nashville, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis and west of Cincinnati. This challenging but fair 18-hole golf course appeals to all skill levels, and its scenic views of rolling hills and tree-lined fairways are sure to make golfing memories for years to come. Owned and operated by former Purdue and New York Giants fullback Randy McMichael, Salt Creek Golf Retreat offers stay and play packages that include golf, and a fully furnished 1 or 2 bedroom condo. After your rounds, be sure to stop by the 19th Hole Sports Bar and Restaurant for great food, fun, and drinks. Randy and his staff will treat you like family. For more information, log on to saltcreekgolf.com. That's saltcreekgolf.com. Or give them a call at 812-558-5944. Salt Creek Golf Retreat. Start making your golfing memories today.
Yeah, go online to saltcreekgolf.com to see for yourself, folks. I promise you, it's an absolutely fantastic place, and Randy's staff and family are absolutely out of this world. Great people. All right, now joining us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Boston Red Sox legend and a great friend of the show, Rico Petrocelli. Let me remind you a little bit about Rico's background. He's from Brooklyn, New York. He was signed as an amateur free agent by the Boston Red Sox in July of 1961, made his major league debut in September of 1963, played his entire career with the Red Sox, last playing in 1976. He was a member of the Red Sox Impossible Dream Team in 1967, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, and he also played in their World Series team of 1975. He was selected to the AL All-Star team twice in 1967 and 1969. In that 69 season, he finished 7th in the MVP voting, batting .297 with 40 home runs and 97 RBIs. And like I mentioned, he's been a wonderful friend of the show over the years, and we're honored he is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Rico, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Hey, guys, how are you? It's great to be on with you again. I'll tell you, speaking of that golf, I could use that couple of lessons from that golf club in Indiana I played today, and geez, a couple of good holes, though, but I love to play golf now, especially since I've been retired.
So Rico, catch us up a little bit. I know it's been a busy summer for you with the reunion of the 67 team. What's been going on this year?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been doing a lot for the Red Sox. Not on the field, but they get calls from either their sponsors or other companies, and they're looking for speakers, they're looking for grand openings, sign autographs, all that type of stuff. So the Red Sox call us, the former players who are in the area, if we'd like to do it, and it's a paying opportunity. And so they've been terrific. They've called me a lot for the last couple of years. And in all honesty, when the team is doing well, people want to have a player, a former player, and to sign autographs or do something with the organization. I got a couple of speaking programs that I use and kind of compare a little bit about sports in the business world, stuff like that. So, and I also help my son with his marketing company, and I'm involved in a few other things too. And so I'm keeping busy. It's great. Plus 9 grandkids. And so they keep us very, very busy.
No doubt. So, Rico, I want to get your thoughts as we look at, this year's Red Sox team. One area of concern is the sharp decline in the home runs that they're hitting now in the post-David Ortiz era, dead last in the American League right now. Should we Red Sox fans, should we be concerned as we look ahead to the postseason that, if their bats go cold like they did last year in the postseason, that they could get swept again?
Well, anything's possible, but since the All-Star break, they've been hitting a lot of home runs, and they've gotten some real key clutch home runs from a number of the players. So at this point, I don't know if we can complain too much. Everybody's concerned that they're not going to do it in the postseason. Now, the difference is this year that these guys have some experience now with postseason play. Like Betts and the outfield, especially Bogarts, and of course Ramirez is a veteran, and Vasquez and Leon, two very good catchers, and Moreland's a veteran. So and the pitching staff is pretty much the starting staff. So. I wouldn't go by last year. Last year was just a year, I think. I really believe this, that, you know, with all the celebration for David Ortiz, which lasted a couple of weeks, you know, I think it exhausted the whole team. I think they were, and I've seen that before, where, you know, that's gone on, and it just that so much activity's going on with a particular player retiring, and it affects the whole team. That's my opinion. Not an excuse. Don't forget, Cleveland pitched very well against the Red Sox. Not just Kluber, but the other pitchers as well. And then they had, you know, with Miller and Allen, and they got a pretty good staff. But I think this year's a little different. I would be very surprised. I don't know who they're going to play the first round, but if and when they have to play Cleveland, I think, you know, I think they have a good shot at it.
Bob, questions for Rico?
Rico, it's great to hear your voice as always, and I got to talk to you, Rico. I was watching. It's something that's in the news today. I was watching the Yankees Tigers game today, Rico, and
I heard about it.
Seems like I'm hearing so much more of this, and we're reading about it the next day, Rico, about beanball wars, and to me, it's not even beanball wars, and like it used to be. It's just so childish, Rico. I mean, today we had 8 guys were thrown out of the game. It was almost a 4.5 hour, 9-inning game. Again, it seemed like the Yankees is probably headed for the postseason, and they're risking suspensions now to hurt their chances possibly. One guy got hit in the head for the Tigers. I mean, it just kept going back and forth. It was crazy, Rico. But I'm saying to myself, you know, back in your day, you had little brushbacks and things like that, but it seemed like guys could police themselves totally different than these guys. Now it's like, I'm going to get you, then I'm going to get you, and I'm going to get you, and I'm going to have the last say. I just wanted to get your opinion about this. To me, it's so dangerous, but childish, and it just grates on my nerves, Rico.
Yeah, it is aggravating. You don't want to ever see a guy get hit in the head. I got hit in the head 3 times. And one of them was a retaliation, and I just never saw the ball. And so I couldn't move. You know, I lost the ball in a glare in center field. The other 2 times weren't too bad because it was more on the top of the helmet. And then a number of times, you know, you get thrown at, you get hit in the ribs or the rear end or the elbow. That's miserable. But you don't have to throw at somebody's head. There's no doubt about it. You can throw, if you're going to throw at a guy. Let's say somebody throws at your guy and he brushes him back and he comes close, you know, and the batter goes down. Well, you can retaliate and hit the guy in the back, you know. So if that happens and the umpire doesn't say anything, then the other club's going to come back. Doesn't have to throw at his head. You know, he could throw again at his legs, his ribs even. And, you know, it's obviously not as dangerous, but, you know, it's been going on since baseball first started. I mean, you know, probably in the 1800s, even though I wasn't around then. But, you know, and it's very dangerous now. I don't blame them. I don't like to see it. I don't mind the guy pitching in, but there's no reason to throw at a guy's head. Yeah, I think you're right about the Yankees, because I think the Yankees would be very dangerous in a playoff spot if they get healthy, you know, and if their pitching is decent. Again, you starters really until, well, you might in a 7-game series want to use 4, but you still can use 3 and get away with it. So, yeah, I mean, they're hurting that. They'd be dangerous. I would be concerned about the Yankees playing the Red Sox if they had to, or any other team, because they're a club that can get hot all of a sudden and just bang the ball all over the place and have decent pitching. And if the bullpen, you know, all of a sudden comes around, because the playoffs are a little different. I'm telling you, there's just it's a little different. It's a little, you know, more intense than the season. A lot more intense than the regular season game.
Rico, as we've talked about both on the radio and TV side in the past, you were one of the few shortstops to hit 40 home runs in a season in 69, and that was after hitting just 12 the year before. You had really good years, 70 and 71, 29, 28. But to go from 12 to 40 home runs, Rico, if that was 1988 as opposed to 68, people say he's got to be taking something. But you and I have talked to it before. It seemed like you just really blossomed at a hitter. But what else happened, Rico, to let you to get that kind of power? And, of course, your average, you were almost a 300 hitter that year also.
Yeah, well, in 68, I had arm problems, and so I didn't play a full year. I think in 67, I hit 17 home runs or something like that. So I was starting to hit some more home runs, and then the winter of 68 and 69, I gained about 20 pounds of not fat, but I was working out. We couldn't lift weights. They didn't want us to lift weights. And so we did all the chin-ups and all those other, type of exercises. And I think just from my genes, my brothers, 4 brothers, they too, around that age, really developed, physically. And I think that's what happened with me. And going into spring training, I said, you know what, I'm just going to go out there, give my best. I have a bad day. I'm going to come back and just, forget about the bad day. And the ball just seemed like a grapefruit to me. I hit everything and with power. And so, for 3 or 4 years there, I was hitting home runs, and that's one of the reasons why they moved me to. But after that, the home runs went down. And it happens in a lot of guys' careers. If you look at most guys, with the exception of real, superstar, Hank Aaron and Willie Mays, Mantle, and all those guys, there's exceptions. So it's almost every year for them. Just have outstanding ability. And but most other players, that have 3, 4, 5 good years, let's say, out of a 13 or 15 year career. So, it doesn't happen every year for most guys. You hit your peak, and then, you start coming down a little bit. But those years, no, we never, I would never take anything. I was too afraid. I was always afraid of my health, later on. How's it going to affect me later on? But we really didn't have anything available. There were some amphetamines or diet pills. That guys, if they wanted it was a doubleheader, they could take. But you know what? You can drink a couple of cups of coffee. It does the same thing. Gets you up a little bit. Then you can't get to sleep. So you got to drink hot milk or something like that. I don't know.
Rico, just a couple more before we let you go. Wanted to get your assessment of Rafael Devers. What are your thoughts on what you've seen from him so far?
Well, I was a little concerned about the Red Sox bring up, a rookie in a pennant race. I know they did it with Bogarts, and it worked out. And so we didn't know what to expect from him, from Devers. But he's turned out he's got a quick bat, and this kid's strong. When you watch his swing, he puts not only his arms, but he's got those shoulders and the legs behind the swing. And that's why his ball carries so much. He's a strong kid. And, he got up to a great start. Now they start pitching him a little different, and then he has some bad days, but it looks like he's going to be a good one. Third base, so far, so good there. He's the type of guy where you can always move to first base. If all of a sudden you have another prospect in the minor leagues as a third baseman. So, no, this kid's a good-looking player. Runs pretty good too, and I think he sparked this team. I think he turned out to be the guy that everybody was talking about. If we only had a guy that was a home run hitter and could knock in runs, we need that. And well, he's done that. He's done that since he's come up. and so that's probably the reason why they haven't gone out and tried to get that type of Encarnacion guy. Besides wanting to stay under the cap, the luxury tax, but still, no. Right now, it's working out, and it's great. Look at the guys that are filling in. Nunez has done a terrific job now. I mean, Pedroia's been out, Price has been out. Now Bradley, Barnes, they're on the disabled list, and these guys are still coming through. I mean, hey, it's a good sign, but you never know what's going to happen in the playoffs, in the postseason. Just it's almost impossible, to.
So, Rico, before we let you go, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with Rico Petrocelli and all the great things that you're doing? How can they follow you?
Well, I got a website, ricopetrocelli.com. And it's, we got a book out, a new book, the 67 team, myself and former sports writer Chaz Scoggins wrote. And I've been going around doing some book signings, and you can get the book on the website as well. And that's pretty much, the best way if you want to. I write some blogs and stuff like that, and you can get in touch with me through that website too. So I'll get back to you. Whoever does, whoever wants to talk Red Sox or talk baseball. So it's great. Yeah, it's fun. I love it. So I love.
Well, it's always
you guys too. You got a good show.
Thank you, Rico. It's always a privilege for Bob and I to get to spend some time with you. Thank you for your time tonight, and hopefully we get to catch up with you again during the postseason.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love to do that, and thanks for having me on, guys. Take care.
All right, take care, Rico.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
That is Red Sox legend Rico Petrocelli, and boy, Bob, he has been fantastic to us over the years, and it's always great getting his insights. Love having Rico on the show.
I think we've talked to him, Chris, maybe 12 times, a dozen times on both the TV and radio side, and very accommodating. And between him being with the ties in Boston and his kind of career, we never have a shortage of conversation material. We love the guy. Great man.
Absolutely he is. All right, folks, we've got our next guest, Tony Collins, hanging on the line. We'll get to Tony after this brief station break.
You're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari, where NFL legends live on. Back to you, boys.
Him, he's alive.
And now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. Hey, Tony, how are you this week, my friend?
Hi, Tony.
Doing fantastic. How you doing, Chris and Bob?
Really good.
Great.
Thank you, Tony. So, Tony, I wanted to start our time with you tonight by helping me understand something. We hear a lot now, particularly as a Steelers fan, because my boy Le'Veon Bell isn't in camp, right? We hear the difference about being in shape and being in football shape. What's the difference?
Well, I put it to you this way: the football shape is timing. You're gonna, the timing with your linemen, timing with your quarterback. See, he hasn't had none of that, so that's gonna hurt him a little bit. But him being the player that he is, he's not a rookie. He's gone through it before. It shouldn't hurt him too bad. But I'm gonna give him at least 1 or 2 games, that he may be a little bit behind, but it's not going to be too bad for him. But it is a big difference. Football shape and just regular shape is totally different. Unless he's running plays, and if he's really smart, he would do plays that he would be doing in practice right now to get in that football shape. And he's probably doing that if he's smart. He's probably got a trainer and everything like that to get him in that football shape. But it is a difference with the timing. But you got your quarterback that you want to get the timing with, and that's the big thing is the timing.
And Tony, sort of on that same type of subject, like player safety, right? Player health and safety is on the tops of everybody's mind now, which is good. We have a greater awareness, greater concern for that thing now. Hopefully, we're making the game safer. But wanted to get your thoughts. When you look at exhibition games, right? And we all sort of collectively hold our breaths, whoever our favorite team is, right? When you see the starters out there, right? When you look at, for a starter, for you, when you played the game or when you're looking and you see a guy like Tom Brady, how much do those guys really need to get into exhibition games, in order to be ready for week one?
Maybe one series, and that's pretty much it. Being a veteran, you've gone through this thing so many times. Really, preseason is for the rookies and for the guys that that's trying to make the team. You know what I mean? So I think, first of all, there's too many exhibition games. You can actually tell if you got a player that's on your team that's going to make the team or is not going to make the team in practice, what he does in practice. Now, you want to put him in a couple exhibition games, but right, I just don't think the veterans should play at all. I mean, one series throughout the whole preseason, and that's it. I mean, Tom Brady doesn't need to play. I mean, come on. I mean, really? He needs to get sharp or get better. So that's just my opinion now.
Bob, questions for Tony?
Hey, Tony, I want to talk to you about that 83 season where you had your 1,000-yard rushing season. Tony ended up in the Pro Bowl, and I just want to, of course, it's an incredible honor to be honored among the best NFL players on the planet, and to go to Hawaii. Well, just give me your memories of the whole Pro Bowl situation back then, Tony. How did it go?
Oh man, it was fantastic. It was something that you work for, and during the season, and you're having a pretty good season. You don't know if you're gonna get voted for. Back then, I don't know how they're doing it now. The players voted you into the Pro Bowl, and I think now they got the fans voting you in. But back then, when we were playing, the players from different teams would vote you in, and it was a complete honor. It's pretty cool for a fan to vote you in, but it's even cooler if that's a word. It's even cooler when a player from an opposing team votes you into the Pro Bowl. And so when I got voted in, man, it was fantastic. It wasn't so much the trip to Hawaii. It was more of being with the class of guys. I remember my Pro Bowl, I was with Jack Lambert and Earl Campbell. Man, those guys, those are legends. I remember my first practice at the Pro Bowl over in Hawaii, and I go in, and I'm thinking I'm going to be the first one in the locker room because I got there real early. I'm really excited. It's just my third year in the league, and I get there, and Jack Lambert's already there. He's in the locker room, and he's smoking a cigarette. I was like, okay, it was right. Cool. But it was an amazing time to make it to the Pro Bowl.
And Tony, every week we speak with you, I like to bring up some of your old teammates. You played with so many great ones, and today I'm looking down some of the old rosters of guys, and one of the guys we haven't said too much about, to me, is a borderline Hall of Famer. Is Irving Fryer. That was a guy, Tony, I think he spent 9 years in New England, and when he left New England, he stuck around another 8 years, I think, in the league. Incredible amount of longevity. His stats, when you look at him, Tony, are Hall of Fame worthy. It just seemed that kind of guy went under the radar screen. What do you remember him as a teammate?
Irving is a good friend of mine right now, and just a good person. He's actually a minister. The only thing with Irving is, what's been going on with him, and I'm pretty sure you guys heard what's been happening with him right now, the legal stuff. But I think that's kind of hurting him right now. But to play 17 years in the league, 17, and put up some of the numbers that he put up. And I think he should be in there, but there's another guy that definitely should be in there that's not there, and that I played with is Stanley Morgan. If you look at some of Stanley's stats, the average yards per game, average yards per catch that he had. He didn't have Dan Marino throwing the ball to him or anything like that. We didn't throw the ball a lot. we were a running team when Stanley was there, but his average yards per catch is at the top, and I definitely think Stanley should be in there as well as Irving.
And Tony, I wanted to get your thoughts. We saw, I think yesterday, Eric Winston came out. He's the president of the NFLPA, and he agreed with DeMaurice Smith on a topic about the work stoppage that they are saying is kind of destined to happen in 2021. And you went through a work stoppage back early on in your career. Did you find was that beneficial? Did it help you guys ultimately get what you want? Is that the way to go about? I mean, I know people have to have leverage in order to change a deal and that sort of thing. But is that the best way to go about it? Did it make a difference in what you guys were trying to get?
Well, you're with a union and you're with your players, and you don't want to be that guy. I mean, it was my second year in the league, and I really didn't care about it too much. Then as far as what they were doing, I was just happy to be in the league, man. And, my second year in. So, but I don't know how much a difference it made, to be honest with you. And for them now talking about, I heard it was 2021. There might be a work stoppage. I mean,
right.
I mean, that's what, 4 or 5 years from now. 4 years from now, they're talking about this right now. The guys are making good money, and I'm pretty sure they can come to an agreement of what they should be, what should happen, and what shouldn't happen. But again, I also look at it. You got to look at it like this as well. The basketball players, the baseball players with the guaranteed contracts and the different things that these guys, again, the money that these guys are making. Of course, they play a lot of games, but the games that we play, man, it could be your last game that you ever play when you go out on that field. So anything that they want to get, I think they should, they deserve. I put it to you that way. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I don't want to see the football come to that, the NFL come to that, or not going and having a strike. That's the worst thing that any of the guys want. They don't want to go on strike. I'm pretty sure if you ask anybody, they'll tell you nobody wants to strike. So, but you just got to see what happens, and hopefully everything will work out for the guys, and it won't be a stoppage in 2021.
Tony, one of the other things that Eric Winston said is that he didn't think the league was going to be around 20 years from now, and he really didn't care, because he said, hey, the players playing today won't be around. They won't be playing then, and he won't be around as one of the heads of the NFLPA, the president of the NFLPA 20 years from now. So he didn't care. And I don't know, as a fan, Tony, that bothers me, right? Because, it's sort of, what that says to me is it's all about me. Right? It's not about the game. It's not about the health of the game. It's not about the future of the game. I just care about me and my guys right now. The heck with the future. Does that bother you?
Yeah, that bothers me. That bothers me a lot, because you got a kid that's 9 years old playing Pop Warner football right now. That wants to play in the NFL. So I remember when I was 9 years old. And if somebody would have said, well, the NFL is not going to be there by the time you get there, that would bother me. And so I don't know why he would even make a statement like that. That's a statement that, I hate that he even made that statement. But it is what it is. You got these young kids dreaming about playing in the NFL now, and so for him to make a statement like that, it does bother me a whole lot.
So, Tony, before we let you go, remind our listeners once again all the great things that you are doing talk about kids, talk about the great things you're doing for kids and help them get off to college.
TonyCollinsFoundation.com, TonyCollinsSpeak.com. Go to that website. Donating as much as you can. Buy a book. Book's only $10. And we'll make sure that we will get that book to you. And every book that we sell helps a kid to go off to college.
There you go. Tony, always great spending time with you. We look forward to catching up with you again next week. In between now and then, all the best to you and your family.
Hey, now I gotta say this now. We got about 2 more weeks.
Yep, 2 weeks
for the season start.
That's right, 2 weeks from tonight.
I want to get my crown. I got to get my crown back, man.
I don't know. Bob's tough to beat, Tony. I mean, if I were to look at it, my money, if I were betting on the three of us, my money would always be on Bob. That guy, I don't understand why Bob isn't out in Vegas. No, you look at what he predicts every single year. Baseball, football, it doesn't matter. Bob is on the money. My money is on him.
Well, Tony, Tony has fire in his eyes, though, I have fear in mine. So
I'm going for you this year, Bob, man. I'm going for you, man.
I know that. I got a target on my back here.
No doubt. All right, Tony, take care. We'll catch up next week, my friend.
All right, guys.
Good night,
Tony. Former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. We've got our next guest, Nick Ferguson, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Nick on the other side of this quick station ID.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcons tight end, and you're listening to TNT, Thursday Night Tailgate. Brace yourself for the explosion.
And now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Nick Ferguson. Let me remind you about Nick's background. He is from Miami, Florida. Started out his college career at Morris Brown and later transferred to Georgia Tech, where he was a walk-on. He was Tech's Freshman of the Year in 1993. In 95, he led their defensive backs and tackles and was 4th overall on the team. He would later go back to Georgia Tech and finish up his college degree in 2005. He was an undrafted free agent signed by the Cincinnati Bengals in 1996, and he played professional football from 96 to 2009 in the NFL, the CFL, NFL Europe, and the United Football League for teams like not only the Bengals, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, the Ryan Fire, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Chicago Bears, Buffalo Bills, New York Jets, Denver Broncos, Houston Texans, and the Omaha Nighthawks. Over the course of his NFL career, he had 403 tackles, 7 interceptions, 6 fumbles, and had 1 sack. He is now a regular contributor over on the No Huddle Show on TuneIn.com, hosted by our friends Brian Weber and Cordell Stewart. Their show airs live every Monday through Friday from 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're glad to have Nick back with us tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Nick, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Welcome back, Nick.
Hey, Chris and Bob. How's it going, my friends?
Oh, very good, Nick.
Thank you.
But I understand, Nick, you're at an NFL gala. At least you were tonight back out there in L.A. What's going on?
Well, NFL Network was throwing this big bash for the guys on their show who are all Hall of Famers, Kurt Warner, LaDainian Tomlinson, Michael Irvin. There was Marshall Falk and Terrell Davis. So it was a great event. A lot of media came out. And they were just pretty much kind of trying to highlight these guys and validate them for everything that they did on the field because to play in the NFL is definitely an honor. Every guy wants to wear that gold jacket and end up in Canton, but we all know only a couple of guys will kind of get that opportunity. So it was great to see some of these guys. And I mean, I played in golf tournaments with LaDainian Tomlinson and Marshall Falk, but as Marshall was quick to remind me, he asked me, have I been working on my golf game? And I told him, hey, listen, like I told you before, I don't play, I participate, and there's an entirely different, idea when you're playing golf. But it was a great event.
So, Nick, I want to kind of go back to some of your time in the league and get your thoughts. You played your first 3 seasons, with the Jets, and when you look at that franchise now, right, a team that was 1 win away from the playoffs just a couple of years ago, to a team that now is really starting all over again. Where do you think the Jets go from here?
It's hard to say because it's hard, as I often tell people, you can't play chess with checker pieces. And to me, that's what the NFL is. And that's not a discredit to any of the guys who are on the Jets roster. But to be really competitive, I mean, you have to have a core group of guys that are seasoned, that have been playing together for a while. And as though it's often said, and it is a cliche, but it is true, you need the ideal guy under center to make plays for you. And right now, McCown is not that guy. He's just kind of a bridge. And you have Christian Hackenberg and Bryce Petty. So it's really difficult if you're a Jets fan right now. No Eric Decker, no Brandon Marshall. So it is kind of, it looks very bleak for them right now. And I feel for my former defensive back coach, who's now the head coach, and Todd Bowles, because it's just like, well, what do I have to work with? Quincy Nunwa, we thought that, well, maybe he would be the one shining light on that team, and now he suffered a season-ending injury. So it's now like, where do we go from here? So all you can do is just go out there for the next 16 weeks, play your heart out, hope to be in some games in the fourth quarter, and maybe you can pull out some of those games because maybe your opponent has underestimated you. But right now, it's about building for the future, looking to 2018, and hopefully we can get some players in that draft to make the team more competitive.
And you mentioned the phrase a moment ago, ideal guy under center. And, Nick, I want to get your thoughts on the Broncos because they've made the decision to go with former seventh-round pick Trevor Siemian at quarterback this year. What do you think that means for Paxton Lynch and his future in Denver?
Basically what that says is he's not ready yet. And I know that's when you say he's not ready, and knowing that the Broncos moved up in the draft to pick up Paxton, it's very disappointing from their standpoint, because you got to think about it. In 2012, Brock Osweiler was the quarterback that was drafted to now be the face of the franchise, and he's not there, and he has his issues in Cleveland right now. They're shopping him, and then Paxton come in and kind of built in that same type of mode, a 6'7" quarterback, strong arm. He's very mobile and able to get out the side of the pocket and make some plays, but somehow his maturation process and his growth has been slowed. I don't know what has been the cause of it, but I thought coming into the season he would fare well, because both he and Trevor Siemian would be on equal playing fields, because they would be learning Mike McCoy's offense at the same time, and that didn't seem to be the case. And when you talk to the Denver Broncos, the guys on either side of the ball, they feel as though Trevor gives them the best chance to win, even though when you talk to most people, he's viewed as being average at best. But to me, you can be average, but it's about the confidence that the guys in the room, have for you and your ability to go out and perform and do your job and what's needed. So Trevor gives them the best opportunity right now. As far as long term, if Paxton doesn't show signs next year or towards the end of the season like he's really ready to push Trevor Siemian, then that means now you go into 2018 having to admit that you made a mistake, and now you have to go and try to find another guy to be the face of your franchise.
Bob, questions for Nick?
Nick, playing 3 years in New York like you did, we hear a lot about players that have come and gone. It can be a very tough place to play, Nick. The big city, a lot of nightlife, etc. I mean, is that something that was ever an issue for you, Nick? Did you ever partake in it? And what kept you grounded those 3 years?
Well, no, I was never that type of player. And, you guys led in with my story and how I kind of got into the league. I didn't come from a family with money. I grew up in the inner city, and I learned hard work by watching my mom work and try to raise 5 kids on her own. So to me, that was my frame of mind. But also when I left Buffalo, I came across a guy by the name of Bill Parcells, and he sat me down in a room, and, he was a guy, I knew his persona when I got there. I was a little nervous being around him because he puts a lot of pressure on his players, because he wanted to see if you can handle the pressure that the NFL is going to put on you. And he just kind of, we just talk life. We talk football. And he was just like, as long as you stay on that road of hard work, you will definitely be okay. And he was just like, well, some people are motivated by different things when you're in the NFL. Some motivated by money and fame, some motivated by fear. And for him, he was just like, well, you have to find what that is and twist it. And for me, I just kind of lean on his teaching. I didn't really need to be out late at night to have people know that I'm a football player. I mean, that was my job. It wasn't a hobby. I wasn't in college. I'm not playing an amateur sport. This is my job. So it was all about sacrifice and dedication. And he said, well, if you do those things, you'll play in this league 10 years. And I listened to everything he said, and I ended up playing 10 years in the NFL. So going out, hanging out, and partying. And other players did that, and I'm not knocking them for that, but that wasn't me. My job is, I want to be the best player that I can be, and sometimes you make sacrifices. I tell players now, you have to determine, what sacrifice that you want to make and determine how good you want to be. And Herman Edwards used to say all the time, either you want to be good or you want to be great. So some of those things you have to let go. And at the end of the day, when your career is over, you want to be able to say that you went out there every Sunday, Monday, or Thursday, and you gave it everything you had. You don't want to say, well, I went out boozing the night before and I came to practice and I wasn't all together. That when I got in the game, I had no idea what the game plan was. So to me, no. And I didn't want to put any of that kind of bad film on tape. I really didn't want to do that. So for me, it was all about the game and all about trying to live the right life and, show young kids this is how you should be a professional, because at the end of the day, you have to remember this. There are 3 all-important letters in the word professional. It's P-R-O, and that, for me, that's what I needed to be a pro.
And, Nick, when you moved to Denver after that 2002 season, 2-part question, did you have trouble, or tell us about the learning curve of getting used to the mile-high air? Part 2, did the team always consider that to be an advantage against opponents that came into Mile High?
Absolutely. I mean, in Miami, they have the heat, and cold weather teams like the Green Bay Packers, they use the weather to their advantage. So definitely in Denver, the altitude was so important. I mean, you got to think, people talk about the game of football. It is more mental than it is physical. And just kind of give you an idea, when opponents come to Denver, they are sure to pose in their locker room and assign when they walk out of their locker room 528 feet above sea level. So you know exactly where you are. So when you start breathing heavy and you can't breathe and you're looking for the oxygen on the sideline and it's not there, you know you're in Denver, Colorado. So you play to that. That's why when I was there under Mike Shanahan, sometimes we would go to hurry up offense. You kind of, make sure that you can't get your substitutions in. And, those big guys up front, they get tired and they start leaning on the offensive lineman. That's why, year after year, not just due to, great technique from the offensive line, the way they were coached by Alex Gibbs, and having great running backs that played to the scheme, but the fact that you wore down the defense. They were tired. And if you don't utilize that to your advantage, then, you're missing out on something. And Rich Tootin was our strength and conditioning coach while we was there in Denver. And you would have to get in shape to get in shape. So that means everything you did that offseason away from Denver really didn't matter, because it took you at least almost a month to get acclimated to the altitude. So I know teams that were coming in, on the flight, and they were only there for one day. I mean, they were breathing heavy. I mean, I can tell you there were some games that we played, and we played against the New York Jets one time, my former team, and I was on the sideline saying, man, this is the easiest game I've ever played. And that was all due in part because of the altitude.
Nick, as I mentioned in your intro, you were an undrafted free agent. Talk about what you were able to do with the Jets. How did you gain the attention of the coaching staff in order to make the team?
Well, the one thing that helped me, I went to a great institution down in Atlanta, Georgia, called Georgia Tech. And because I went to that institution, there was a lot of respect for the academic quality, So if I can go to Georgia Tech to deal with the schoolwork and play, then I should be able to deal and handle the playbook that they're putting in front of me. And that playbook is pretty big, and it changes every week depending on the opponent. But, that was kind of the first part. The other part was just, hard work. They want to see that you're going to go out and you're going to sacrifice. You're going to do the right things that are required by the team to make sure that they are successful. And, you have to study. I don't care how talented you are, how fast you are, if you don't know the playbook, it's going to be hard for a coach to play you, because the first thing he's going to say is, I can't play you if I don't trust you. So while there might have been other guys who were faster than I was, who might have gone to schools who from programs with multiple SEC or, Big Ten or, Pac-12 championships. The one thing that they lack, it was that work ethic. What are you willing to put in? I mean, you can't ask to go out there every Sunday and say, well, I'm going to hit a switch and I'm going to be able to play. No, did you prepare yourself well during the week? And that's the one thing every coach, no matter where I played, they knew that they had in me as a player, that I am going to make sure that I know everything that I need to know about my opponent. So when I went into that game, I was ready to play.
So, Nick, I got to ask you, you look at, year 2000, during week 13, you get your first interception, your first NFL interception off of Peyton Manning. Is that playing on a highlight somewhere in a den so, like when the fellas come over, they can see that thing looping so you can point that out?
You know what? No, I don't. I'm a really modest guy, and some people would tell you, like, we couldn't even believe that Nick Ferguson was even an NFL player because he didn't act that way. He didn't lead himself and his life in that manner. But it was a great play for me. No, it's not in the loop somewhere, but this season I will put that out on social media. It is a huge part of my life and my early success. And I can tell you in that game, playing Peyton Manning, the interception was huge. You playing in New York, and that's when I first got a taste of the idea of what life could actually be like for a player playing in New York and you're on a winning team. We beat the Colts 41-0, and I think that I could be wrong, but I think that's probably maybe the worst loss that Peyton has suffered. The only one that may be closer is when the Broncos lost to Seattle in a Super Bowl. So to be a part of that history and my first interception to be off a Hall of Fame player like Peyton Manning, that's extraordinary. And for me, it was something that validated all the hard work that I endured trying to get to the NFL, trying to stay there to say, well, here's a play that this kid out of the inner city of Miami made against one of the best quarterbacks to ever lace them up. So for me, I take pride and pleasure in it, but this will be the first year that I even, make notice of it and post it on social media. But it is an important part of my NFL career.
Nick, before we let you go, remind our listeners, how can they stay up to date with all the great things that you're doing, whether it's online or over social media?
Well, you can always find me on Facebook, Nick A. Ferguson, and you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at @NickFerguson_25. And as we approach a new 2017 NFL season, you can find me on NFL on TuneIn, First and Goal every Sunday with Brian Weber.
There you go. Nick, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come back on the show. It's always great for Bob and I to get to spend some time for you. Hopefully we get to catch up with you once the season gets started. Thanks for being here.
Hey, anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.
Take care, Nick. That is former Jets, Broncos, and he played for several other teams. But you want to talk about a talented defensive back that played back not all that long ago. Boy, Nick Ferguson had a lot of talent, and to his credit, as he talked about the smarts of someone coming out of Georgia Tech, a guy that came out and then went back and then finishing his college degree. So I give Nick tons of credit for having gone back and fulfilled a promise to get his degree. He did that back in 2005. So Bob, always good to spend some time with Nick.
It's very impressive, Chris, when you hear about his humble beginnings and to end up in the big city. A lot of guys just get eaten up, but he was on track from the very beginning, and big success story.
All right, we've got our next guest, Randy McMichael, hanging on the line. We'll get to Randy after this quick station break.
Hear your favorite NFL legends sharing their stories and insights every week right here on Thursday Night Tailgate with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari. Take it away, guys.
When the door is locked, there's no way out.
And now back with us and making his 6th appearance on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Randy McMichael. Let me remind you about Randy's background. He's from Griffin, Georgia, which is about 45 miles south of me here in Atlanta. And not only was Randy one of the top 50 football players in the state of Georgia when he was in high school, he also lettered in basketball and track. He attended the University of Georgia, where he was a 3-year letterman. In 1999, he was named a first-team freshman All-American, and in 2001, he was named first-team All-SEC. Finished his college career ranked 9th on Georgia's all-time receiving list. He was drafted in the 4th round in 2002 by the Miami Dolphins, and he played tight end in the league from 2002 to 2012 with the Dolphins, Rams, and Chargers. He became the Dolphins' first rookie tight end to start all 16 games. Over the course of his NFL career, he had 426 receptions for just under 4,600 yards, and he scored 24 touchdowns. And every time he joins us here on Thursday Night Tailgate, this segment is so much fun to be a part of, and we're excited. He is back with us again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Randy, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Welcome back.
What's going on, fellas? This is number 6. Well, I lost count.
Indeed. So, Randy, I want to start off like we do every time we get to have you on the show, talking about your boys at the University of Georgia. Kirby Smart's 2nd season now as head coach. What has to happen for you? What are you going to consider successful this year? What do they got to do in order for you, I should say, to consider it a successful season?
The thing about me is, guys, is that I've been saying this probably since the end of last year. I'm going to wait and see. My expectations, I think this team is and should win the East. But I'm not going to put all my heart like I have these past few years because I can't take it no more. My body can't take it no more. My kids can't run out of the room anymore. Me screaming at the TV and I want my kids to watch the games with me. A couple years they're like, Daddy, we just can't sit down there with you and watch you because you're yelling and cursing. So right now my expectation is that I think they're going to be good. I honestly think that they will have one of the best defenses in the country. When you're talking about, you got 10 of 11 starters. Even though we did lose one of our starting corners in Parrish last week with a foot injury, there's still that front 7 with Trent Thompson and Ledbetter and Bellamy and Carter and those guys and Roquan and Natrez in the linebacking core in the middle. I think that we should be fine. My expectations are that we will play Alabama here in Atlanta, and hey, let the chips fall where they may.
So you mentioned a couple of guys by name, Randy. Who are some of the players that people need to watch this year for the Bulldogs?
Well, defensively, you're talking about 2 guys that I did not think they were leaving school, but I guess they had some press conference where are the 2 outside linebackers and Bellamy and Lorenzo Carter. I mean, these guys, when the bus pulls up to the visiting team stadium, you want these 2 guys off the bus first because they look the part. I mean, these dudes are huge. They're cut. When they go to the combine, they're going to tear it up because that's what they look like, athletic and all those things. But now, a second year under Kirby, I hope that he's got that fight and that dog out of him. Offensively, it's all about Jacob Eason. What is he going to do? How is he going to progress in his second year as a starter? Jim Chaney, our offensive coordinator, comes out, and everybody knows how much I love Jim Chaney. He's my tight end coach in St. Louis. I love him to death. But if he don't get right, he's going to be gone. And he's talking about he had some soul searching. You got a healthy Sony. You got Nick Chubb second year off of knee surgery. I expect big things from this team.
So let's switch gears a little bit, Randy. When you look here locally at the Falcons, coming off, a really crushing loss in last year's Super Bowl, do you think they're going to be able to shake that off, put that in the rear view mirror, or do you think that that's a kind of loss that might linger around for a season or 2?
I think honestly that this team is going to be fine. I really, really do. I think because first of all, you have such a young team, especially defensively, that they don't know no better yet. They really don't. And it sounds funny, but it's so true. They don't know any better. It's like, okay, but the thing about it, you can't take it for granted. We got to the Super Bowl this year. We're going to get back again. You still have to work for it. But I think because I think Dan Quinn is a great leader of this team. And they have this saying right here, embrace the whatever. And I'll never say it because that's just not what I'm going to do. But at the same time, this team is built to last. And this team, people say, well, your window's closing. Well, it's not when you look at how young this team is. They have their quarterback. They have a franchise quarterback under contract, about to get a new deal. They signed their franchise running back. You have Julio. I mean, this team is going to be fine. Now, the one thing that they can't get involved in is, me covering the games here, me working for the Atlanta Falcons Radio Network. is that the fans, okay, they blew, I don't want to say blew the lead because it's preseason, but you blow the lead, you lose the game in Miami. Everybody, oh, God, it looks like, just calm down. It's preseason. Look at what the first team offense and the first team defense did. They went out and kicked butt. And I expect that a lot going on this year.
Bob, questions for Randy?
Always a pleasure to speak with you, my friend. And when you got to Miami in 2002, Randy, they had some good players on that team, like your Zach Thomases, Patrick Surtain. I remember Jason Taylor, of course. On the offensive side, Chris Chambers. Just wondering, out of all those guys, Randy, maybe a couple of guys that really eased your transition from college to the NFL. Who took you under the wing back then?
Well, I mean, I think the one guy was our long snapper, Ed Perry, that played tight end. He was just relegated to being a long snapper. But the one thing he did, because, Jed Weaver was there and Alonzo Mays and Draper and those guys, and they were all cool. But, I knew that they didn't want to see this fourth-round rookie come in and be the starter. So Ed helped me out with so much as far as because the thing about the offense when I got there, it's based Georgia under Coach Don, so the terminology wasn't that bad. It was just everything else, the nuances of the position of tight end in the NFL, knowing that I wasn't a big tight end. And these guys, back in those days, we had guys that were 6'5", 300 pounds, but would get double-digit sacks. Now these guys are 6'2", 220 pounds playing defensive end. I mean, I handled them all day, but I had to grow up and I had to fight with these big guys growing up as the league. So I think it was more Ed Perry. I think off the field, Ed Perry. And I say this about Jason Taylor all the time. I still remember the first road trip we went on as my rookie year, and I get on the plane, and these guys, especially Jason Taylor, they're in custom suits looking like they're going to work in an office. And I was like, dog, is this what y'all do? It's like, hey, son, this is professional. You go as a professional. We're on a business trip. And from that day on, I wore a suit from then on.
It's pretty impressive. And you talked about the toughness of guys back then, Randy, and your first 6 years in the league, you didn't miss a game, and this is not while you're just on the sidelines, or you're catching a lot of passes, you're blocking like crazy, but 6 years of not missing a game, starting most of them, I mean, that's not normal. What do you attribute that? Was it the off-season training, Randy, or was it genes? Tell me what led to that kind of toughness.
I'm a country boy. That's what I am. I'm a country boy that, we grew up stretch for what? This you show up and play. I mean, I didn't take supplements. I didn't do massages. I think it was just, I had a lot of will. And I think that I would have kept the record if I didn't break my leg, on a horse collar tackle. It was just more or less, it was just all about being able and having availability. And that's the most important thing to me. Like, little things get bothered. Yeah, there were some games that I probably should have missed. But I'm like, you know what, man, hey, if it ain't broken, if I ain't bleeding, like my high school coach would say, throw some dirt on, let's go. And that was always my mentality. That's what throws me off today with these players. Like, dog, that kept you out? That kept you out? I mean, we just didn't do that. It's like, you know what, I'll miss some practice time, which I never did, and throw some dirt on it.
Randy, I also wanted to get your thoughts on one of the other teams you played for in the Rams, and their offense really struggled last season. Your guy, Todd Gurley, had a tough year, probably more as a result of the offensive line play than it is Todd's ability. And you got Jared Goff, now going to get his first full season as their starting quarterback. They bring in Sammy Watkins as well at wide receiver. So give me your thoughts. What do you think about the Rams? If you're a Rams fan, are you optimistic about this season, or do you still think they're a year or two away?
Well, the thing about the Rams is you saw last year, and I said this, that people got mad at me, and I really don't care. They had the worst offensive coaching staff in the history of the NFL. I mean, it was just brutal. They had nobody to develop a young tight end or a young quarterback. And it was evident. I mean, it was always run Todd Gurley up the middle 2 times and then try to throw the ball. And that made me so mad because I just thought that they had so much potential. Now, with McVay in, he's an offensive guy. And I think Todd Gurley's going to do some good things this year. I think they're going to throw the ball to him a lot. I think getting Whitworth as a left tackle and a veteran was so big. You get a big play receiver in Sammy Watkins. You go out and get Robert Woods from Buffalo also. I love this kid, Cooper Coop. I think he is going to be a big-time player for him. But one guy, listen, look out for this guy right here, Gerald Everett. All right, he's a tight end. He is like in the mode of Jordan Reed that they had in Washington. Watch how they use this kid. This kid is a special athlete, and when they get him the ball, he makes plays. But I think the Rams are going to be better. Do I think they're going to win the division? No. But I think they'll be better. But they'll be better if they get rid of that white horn in their helmet. I mean, it's just so ugly, and they'll match their helmet. I mean, that's so sad, isn't it? It's just so
You don't
ugly.
like the throwback?
Oh, well, if you're going to wear the throwback helmet, wear the throwback uniform. That's what I'm saying. Like, it just don't mix with the new uniform. It's so ugly. It's hideous.
Hey, Randy, you get your thoughts, on just AFC as a whole. Is there a team capable of challenging the Patriots this season in the AFC, barring an injury to Tom Brady? Who can give them a run?
First of all, you got to get them out of Foxborough. You got to find a way to get them out of Foxborough. I love Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh might be the only team. And it all depends on if Le'Veon Bell is healthy. I think if Le'Veon Bell was healthy last year, it would have been a better game than it was. I think a team that is built to go to New England and win, and I'm so high on this team, are the Tennessee Titans because they're built like the Ravens were when they went in New England and beat them. A power run game. You keep Tom Brady off the field. You can rush Tom with 4 and drop 8. They're built that way. Now, can they get there? I don't know. But right now, the only team I really see is Pittsburgh. My Dolphins with Jay Cutler, we'll see. They look good tonight. Jay Cutler had a fumble, and then I thought he had another fumble. But I think Pittsburgh, if you can find a way to get them out of Foxborough, you might have a shot.
And speaking of Jay Cutler, give me your thoughts on Cutler. If you're a veteran on that team, right, and now, and then Tannehill goes down, and you hear that they're bringing in a guy like Jay Cutler with all of the perceptions of Jay, right? The personality issues, and is he really invested, and does he really care, and all that sort of stuff. As a veteran, do you when he arrives, do you embrace him and let him know, hey, we're with you, we're behind you, let's make this thing work? Or are you sitting back waiting to see what he does and how he, interjects himself into the locker room before you make a decision one way or the other?
Well, the one thing about if you're a leader of the team, if you're a guy that's been there for a while, you go up and you bring him into the circle. Because the one thing about it, all those guys on the team knew that when they signed him, he's going to be our guy. He's our quarterback. So we have to ingratiate him. And then on Jay's part, he has ingratiated himself with the fellas. I saw where Rashad had a birthday party in Miami. Jay had to be there. You're supposed to be there. You're supposed to be doing things, or say your teammate has a charity event. So Jay needs to be there because that is how you get the camaraderie when you haven't been with these guys that long. And right now, I mean, you see some good things from Jay. One thing we know, he has talent. He has so much arm talent. They had a nice pass tonight to Devontae Parker. I mean, he has the weapon, and Jay Train can run the rock. His thing is, and I know Adam Gase, don't lose it for us. And that's the thing about it. Don't lose it for us. And Jay Cutler, he loses games for people. And that's why I'm just on the hinge. I think he's more talented than Ryan Tannehill. I think he gives us a better chance than Ryan Tannehill. But at the same time, just don't lose it.
So take that a step further. If he has a good season, what do you do Do you try to bring Jay back, one more time and then try to, find a different young quarterback? Where does that leave Tannehill if Cutler does well this year?
Well, I mean, there's so many different issues behind it. If Jay plays well, hell yeah, you bring him back. Yes, you bring him back. The thing with Tannehill is they can get from up under his contract. He's having surgery, so he's gonna be probably when you talk about in the league year, he probably won't be healthy. So you can't cut a player if they're not healthy. So, but at the same time, once he gets healthy, you can release him. I think that if Jay plays well, Ryan Tannehill's gone. I honestly do. I think Ryan is gone, and then they find another young quarterback. I think Adam Gase, and I said this, I wasn't on y'all show. I wasn't the biggest Gase fan because I didn't know a lot about him other than what people were telling me. Like, Randy, he's going to be a good guy. And then after that Tennessee game last year, when Tennessee just straight ramrodded my Dolphins, and he cut all those linemen, and then they started winning. I saw that, but you look at them, I think 10 games, they were like 7 points or less. So they could have easily went from a playoff team from a non-playoff team to a playoff team. I mean, that's how close the margin was. So I want to see if they can get better than that.
Bob, a couple more for Randy before we let him go?
Sure, Randy. I talked to you before about how tight ends are my favorite players on the football team just because of the scope of their jobs. And when it comes down to learning playbooks and things like that, Randy, there's passing routes, there's blocking schemes, there's so much you need to know. I mean, is that the toughest position, do you think, to play on a football team?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I would always say when I was playing, yeah, it is because of, but now it's all about, all right, you can't block, so we won't let you block. You can't run routes, so we won't let you run routes. I mean, it's so different now because of the way the college game is sending tight ends into the league now. I mean, it's been so long since you've seen a tight end that can play wide. And what I mean by wide is a guy who plays with his hand in the dirt. O.J. Howard has been the first one in a long time that can do all those things. I mean, I still think that quarterback is the most difficult position to play in sports and professional sports, period. I just think that's what it is. But, I mean, tight end, if you can have a tight end that can do multiple things, it gives your roster so much flexibility because you don't have to keep a fullback. You can keep an extra linebacker or you can keep an extra tackle because he can pass. I mean, it's so many things you can do if you have a tight end that can do so many things.
And the three different franchises, Randy, Miami, St. Louis, San Diego, was one offense more complex than the other?
No, they really weren't. They were not.
No?
I mean, I had 1 year because, I mean, I was always, like I said, I played under Coach John and Norm Turner, and they all ran the same offense that Zampese put in, same wordage, same everything. 1 year, the first year Spagnolia got there when he brought in Pat Shermer. We ran the West Coast offense, which was a little bit different as far as terminology. The routes and everything was the same, but just terminology. But the thing about it is, and I talk to young players about this all the time, it's still football. And that's why I look at it. Football came easy to me. It doesn't come easy to everybody. You have those guys who just can't like concept. And when you can grasp the concept of football, because it's all the same, it's such a copycat league, you know that if you have a basic cross, majority of the time it's going to be a post over back on any offense. But some kids and some players just can't grasp that. And I just never had a problem with it.
Randy, before we let you go, remind our listeners how they can stay up to date with all the things you're doing, whether it's online or over social media.
Well, you can always find me at Randy81Mac. Randy Mac 81 on Twitter. And just make sure you listen out for me. We got some big things on my college football show is about to start this year on 92.9 The Game, doing Falcons Radio Network, doing the pregame for the Falcons. So we got a bunch of big things going, man.
Yes, you do. And Randy, it's always so much fun for Bob and I to get to spend this segment with you. You're so fantastic. We can't thank you enough for coming back and being part of the show.
And I got y'all anytime, man. I appreciate y'all for having me on for the 6th time. Can't wait for the 7th.
There you go.
There we go.
Thank you, Randy. Take care, my friend. We'll catch up soon.
All right, fellas.
Good night.
That is former Dolphins, Rams, and Chargers tight end Randy McMichael, and again UGA as well at the University of Georgia. And what a great guest he is, Bob. Every single time Randy comes on the show, it's always insightful. He's always right on point, and the things he talks about is fantastic. Always enjoy the segment when he's a part of the show.
Incredibly underrated, Chris. I don't know how he didn't make Pro Bowls. I mean, if you look at his stats, they're really incredible. So versatile in what he did. But the stats speak for themselves. He was a great tight end.
We've got our next guest, Randy Grimes, hanging on the line. Before we get to Randy, I want to give a shout out to our good friends over at the Gridiron Greats organization. Please help support a wonderful cause that's taking care of guys who literally left so much of themselves out on the playing field. Remember, folks, these are the guys who played back, when they still had to get off-season jobs to support themselves and their families. It's organizations like this one that was started by Mike Ditka, the Gridiron Greats here, who are, trying to help the guys that we all grew up watching and reading about. Please go to gridirongreats.org to see what you can do to get involved. Like I say, we've got Randy Grimes hanging on the line. We'll get to Randy on the other side of this quick station break.
You're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate, where NFL legends live on, with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari. Available on TuneIn and Podbean. Now back to Chris and Bob.
Just listen.
And now joining us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Randy Grimes. Let me give you some background on Randy. He's from Tyler, Texas, played his college ball at Baylor, where he helped them to win the 1980 Southwest Conference Championship, along with guys on that team like Mike Singletary. And as a Steeler fan, I always remember running back Walter Abercrombie. He was a second-round draft pick, the 45th overall selection in 1983 by the Tampa Bay Bucs. He played center in the league from 83 to 1992, all in Tampa. And we are excited that Randy is with us tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Randy, Chris, and Bob here. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me. I just heard how insightful the last Randy was, so I'm not sure if I can follow that.
I'm sure you can.
You'll be fine.
So, Randy, I want to start our time with you tonight by going back to your time in college at Baylor. Being from Texas, which is, a hotbed of high school football, how were guys like Coach Bill Lane able to convince you to go there versus Texas or A&M or SMU or any of the other places in and around the Texas area? How did Baylor get you?
Hey, he let me fly the plane when they came and picked me up for a recruiting trip. That's all it took. Hey, and also though, keep in mind, I come from a rich Southern Baptist background, and already had a sister at Baylor, so I mean there was a lot of things working in Baylor's favor. But you can't say enough about Coach Taft and the staff that he had at that time, and we were destined for greatness, some of those teams. And you were talking about Walter Abercrombie, but don't forget about Frank Pollard and Greg Hawthorne. They were in those Pittsburgh backfields too.
That's right.
And from Baylor.
So, Randy, I saw, some of the, like I said, guys that you also had on those teams, and then, looking, for the guys that graduated with you and then you played against in the NFL. And boy, I got to wonder, like I say, Mike Singletary was a part of that team. And then when you get to the NFL, now all of a sudden you're literally bumping heads with Mike Singletary twice a year, because back then the Bucs and the Bears were in the same division, so you're playing them twice a year. What was it like facing Mike Singletary essentially over the course of your career?
Pretty much. Mike Singletary broke 4 helmets in college, and all 4 of them were in practice against me. So you can imagine the head trauma that Randy Grimes has today.
Wow.
All before I left Baylor. But you know what? I learned a lot about playing center from Mike Singletary, being such a great linebacker, and then having to face him every year for pretty much my entire career at a different level, where guys were so big and strong and fast. Because of Mike Singletary in college, I grew up a lot, and I was ready for that next level because it wasn't a lot different. When I got to the pros, based on the guys that I played with at Baylor and the kind of talent that we had, in those early 80s teams.
And Randy, I saw an interview that you did about 6 years ago, and you're telling a story about how Randy White was your welcome to the NFL moment during the Hall of Fame game that you played against the Cowboys. Do you mind sharing that story?
Well, I remember I had to start at left guard, and I'm a center. I've always been a center. But my first start, my rookie year, was against Randy White. And, here's somebody that I'd been watching on television for years, through high school, through Baylor. And here I was having to line up against him. And not only that, try to keep him off our quarterback. And, I can remember one time him just completely knocking me down on the ground, like right off the bat, one of the first plays of the game. And I can remember him reaching his hand down to pick me up, which was unusual in the first place. And I remember saying, "Thank you, sir." And I bet I called him sir 3 or 4 times during the course of the game. But later we were walking through the Hall of Fame, touring the facility as a team, and every year they have the sports writers submit their pictures from the year before, and they place the best pictures in the Hall of Fame. And I can't tell you how big these pictures are. They're like 8 feet by 10 feet tall, these individual pictures on this wall. And I walk in, I've got the whole team with me, and there's a picture from the game of Randy White reaching over me, grabbing the quarterback, and I'm all crumpled on the ground. and it was just it was my first humiliation in the NFL. Not the last, but my first.
Bob, questions for Randy?
Great to speak with you, Randy. I want to talk about the '83 draft, because when we think about that, that was the quarterback draft, Randy. The Elways and of course Hall of Famers in that draft were guys like Eric Dickerson, of course Jim Kelly, and we can go on and on. But you, a second-round draft pick, I think there was only 10 offensive linemen picked ahead of you. What were your expectations that day going into the draft, Randy? Bring us through that day.
I didn't really have any expectations. I had no idea where I was going to be drafted. I knew that I was going to be somewhere in the first half. And when I say first half, I mean the first 6 rounds. But, I'd had some great combines. I'd had a great senior year. Whether or not it was a good enough year or whether or not they thought Baylor's offense was an NFL-style offense or not, I'd had some great combines. And, I was running good. I was lifting good. I was doing everything right. I was having good pro days when they came around. And, my stock really elevated even so after the season. But I didn't have any expectations of where I was going to go. And to be honest, guys, I didn't care. I just wanted a shot. And had I been the first player selected or the last player selected, it would have been fine with me at that time, because I just wanted to get in the league and I just wanted to at least give it a shot. And, getting drafted by Tampa Bay, they had just come off a playoff year. It was a strike-shortened year, but it was a playoff year. And here I was, a kid from East Texas, going to a beachside town, that had just come off the playoffs. You couldn't have picked a better place for me to go then. And I was excited to be going to Tampa, and little did I know what the next decade was going to bring. But still, looking back, I have no regrets. I love the town. I love the team. I love the time I was there. It was a great place to raise a family and start my life. And even though it was a revolving door for that decade with coaches and offensive line coaches and players, quarterbacks, everybody, one thing that was consistent was my ability to start at center, and I have no regrets.
And playing the position of center, Randy, these days we see centers, we get the close-ups of the offensive line. They're the quarterback of that offensive line. It's like they're pointing, they're calling, they're talking, et cetera. Did you have to do a lot of that under John McKay's system?
Not as much under McKay as maybe we started doing under Perkins and Williamson and Coach Weish. There's basic calls that happen on every play. You have to identify people's strengths and weaknesses, especially passes and when you're doing hinge protections and things like that. So, you're making your basic calls all the time. But, the complicated audible system didn't really start with us till probably after the McKay era. And, but you know what? It becomes part of what you do. It's a natural reflex when you get up to the line of scrimmage, and you don't think anything of it. You just kind of do it.
Randy, we've had the privilege of having Gay Culverhouse on the show several times over the last few months, and you played for her father, Hugh, who owned the Bucs for many years. Talk about your relationship with the Culverhouse family.
Oh, I love Gay. I love what she's doing. She cares a lot about her players. And for somebody who is not involved with the team anymore, for her to continue to do what she does, and that's advocate for retired players, I can't say enough about Gay and my relationship with her. I love her and what she's doing for us. And I just, she's an icon as far as I'm concerned with retired players and what she's been able to pull off. And I just can't thank her enough. I thank her all the time. I'll just text her out of the blue sometimes and just say thank you, because there's not enough of those people out there that understand what these guys went through and what they're still going through. And I'm talking about pre-93 guys. Not that guys after 93 aren't going through that, but the pre-93 guys are leaving the game without the benefits of the guys after 93. And, that's the guys that she's out there advocating for. And, I can't thank her enough for that.
And Randy, as you talk about, guys leaving the game, and we've talked to so many of your peers, former players who struggled once, they retired, either on their own when they stepped away from the game, or the game sort of retired them because they got released and the phone just didn't ring anymore. And football was, all they know, right? From the time that, you guys are little kids playing in Pop Warner to, your time through the NFL. Your last season, Sam Weiss was the head coach of the Bucs. How did he let you know that your time with the Bucs was over?
Well, and I tell the story all the time because it's part of the journey that I was in at the time and what lasted for the next 20 years. But I remember standing at my locker and Sam coming up behind me. The season was over, and he just kind of put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Randy, we won't be needing your services next year." And, I couldn't believe that. I don't know how I thought it was going to end, but I didn't think it was going to end like that. After 10 years, after 5 head coaches and 6 different offensive line coaches, and all the blood, sweat, and tears that I had left on that field in Tampa, I guess I didn't know what to expect on the end. I guess I was just going to play the game forever. That I was going to be able to leave on my own terms, and I can just remember thinking, it's not like I wanted a highway named after me or them to have a parade, but I guess I just never thought it would be like that, where he just walked up and said, "We just won't be needing your services." And, I understand NFL's a business, and I understand that there wasn't a lot of loyalty with Coach Weiss and me. So, there was no hard feelings. I guess I just didn't understand that was it. And, I'd been pretty beaten up that last year, and I knew that I probably didn't have a shot anywhere else. And I can just remember raking everything out of my locker into a black trash bag and walking out the back door, very unceremoniously. And again, it's not like I expected anything great to happen or anything, but I just didn't think it would end like that. And I threw that trash bag in the trunk of my car and I drove away, and that was it. Football was over. And yeah, you're right. When you don't have that identity anymore, when you don't have that sense of who you are, you really start to struggle. And there's no way to prepare for it. You could work other jobs in the off season. You can have all the degrees in the world. But when you're doing football 24/7 for 4 years of college and then 10 years of NFL, you're never prepared for that day. And yeah, you sit around for a couple of years twiddling your thumbs. Very few of us guys go straight into broadcasting or the media, or did we even have those channels available to us back then. But I think guys really struggle when it's over, just trying to figure out who they are. Where do they get their sense of self-worth now, and what's their identity? Even now, people still come up to me and think of me as a football player, but it's been, 25, 26 years ago. And so when you don't have that identity and you're not running out between those bleachers and under those lights, and people ask me all the time, what do I miss about the game? And I don't miss the game as much as I do the locker room. And that's what we never get back. We never get back that camaraderie and stuff like that. That's our identity.
And Randy, you went through a rough time after the game, right? With painkillers and
right.
and addiction and all of those sorts of things. And I also read that you struggled, to think about the pressure of, while you were playing the game, the pressure about being a second-round pick and everything you had to do to stay on the field, and pressure to support your family, and fearing that someone was going to take your position at any time. Talk about all of those things.
Well, and my addiction started when I played for the Bucs. The older guys taught me one thing that you do is you do whatever you have to do to stay out on the field. And when you talk about pressure to stay on the field, well, that's pressure that we all feel in our jobs, because if we're not out on the field, somebody else is going to be in your position. So you do what you have to do. And I never looked at it like it was an addiction. I looked at it like it was a necessary evil of the job to stay out there. So I would throw handfuls of painkillers down, and I would get out there and I would stay in my job. I would stay on the practice field. I would stay in the game. I did what I had to do to do that. And, I had so many enablers back then. I had team coaches, team trainers, teammates. I had fans. And all I had to do was play good on Sunday, and it would last a whole nother week, the addiction would. And what I never thought that was developing into a full-blown addiction, I never thought that I would take that into my private life. And then when I did retire, when Sam did slap me on the shoulder and say that we won't be needing your services anymore, I took that addiction into my private life. And the injuries were just getting worse the older I got. The pain pill addiction was just getting worse the older that I got. The tolerance was building up. So it was more. And, this went on for another 20 years. But it was a lot of the things that I just talked about also. It wasn't just about the chronic pain. It was about who was Randy Grimes and what was his identity now, and what was his contribution going to be, and just trying to figure out who I was. And the addiction was raging out of control. It didn't matter how many jobs I lost, or relationships I went through, or cars I lost, or money that I went through. I could not stop doing what I was doing. I could not stop taking the pills. And it was only 8 years ago, September 22nd of 2009, that there was just enough people left in my life to get me to a facility. And it was through the people at Player Care Foundation, Dana Lehan, that got me to the place that I'm at now. And of course, I've just reinvented myself here, and I get to give back to the guys that I played with and against now for the last 8 years. And, it's been a real opportunity to heal a lot of the relationships that I damaged during that course of that addiction. And, I'm just thankful for where I am right now. It's almost like all those years of football was just preparing me for what I do now, because what I do now is life and death. There's other guys out there that are struggling just like I did for all those years, because, we have that warrior mentality where we suffer in silence. We don't tell anybody our feelings or that we're hurting, and we just self-medicate. And that's where we get in trouble, because we don't have any off switches. We just don't know who to ask for help or how to ask for help. And that's what I do now. And I get to work with and help the guys that I played with and guys that I played against.
So expand on that, for the last couple minutes we have with you, Randy, about what you're doing now. Like I say, we hear an awful lot of these, similar stories. We've had former Bucs, Keith McCants has been on the show and talked about,
right,
a very similar situation that he has gone through in his life, during the game and after. But talk about what you're doing now. You sort of alluded to it, but let our listeners know, and any of the other former players that might be tuning in tonight, about the great things you're doing.
Well, I worked for a facility called Behavioral Health at the Palm Beaches, and after I went through treatment, I started a program down here for retired guys. And it initially started as I'd had a good friend of mine, Tom McHale, pass away right before I came into treatment, and so many other people were starting to kind of speak up about what they were going through right when I came into treatment. So I knew that as soon as I took care of myself, and I had to do that first before I could help anybody else. But as soon as I took care of myself, it was like the following year. And believe me, guys, when I got sober down here in West Palm Beach, they couldn't get rid of me. I was desperate to do whatever it took to stay that way. I would come back. When I left treatment, I would come back on campus, even though I wasn't a client anymore, but I would come back on campus and just pick up cigarette butts, anything I could do just to stay around my safe place and those people who would see my eyes and hear my voice every day, stay accountable to somebody. And I did that for another year, and I started this program down here for retired guys, for guys that I'd played with and against. And, that was 7.5 years ago, or 7 years ago. And since then, we've been able to help hundreds of former NFL players, hundreds of former Major League Baseball guys. We've got a great thing going here. We know how to work with athletes. We know what they're going through. My clinicians down here and the doctors and the psychiatrists and everybody is plugged into what these guys are going through. And, it's just my opportunity to give back to these guys. And I don't just work with athletes. I mean, I work with everybody. I've been doing interventions for over 7 years. And, I travel the country dragging people back. But, I get to see the miracle happen. I get to go into houses and I get to see the grandmother with the missing jewelry who's sobbing uncontrollably. I get to see the empty shelf that used to have a TV on it, but it got pawned. I get to see the wrecked car in the driveway, but then I get to meet the addict or the alcoholic on their turf. I get to see the pain and destruction that they've caused. I get to take them back to treatment, and I get to see the miracle happen 30 days later. And, it's a beautiful thing. And that's what I mean about it. It's almost like football was preparing me for what I do now, because a lot of the things that I learned in football, I get to apply now, and it's opened so many doors for me. So I'm grateful for that part of my journey, but I'm most grateful for this part of my journey. And you know what? I played against some big, bad, mean, badass guys, but nothing was harder than getting sober and staying sober. And, it's my greatest accomplishment ever, and it's also my most rewarding accomplishment.
Wow, good for you, and all the great things that you're doing, Randy, now to help your peers. It's amazing work, and I can't thank you enough for doing that. For the folks that are listening that might need help, whether they're former players or just people in general, tell them how they can find you, follow you, get more information, and get the help they need.
Well, of course, you can find me at my Facebook page, Randy Grimes. You can find me at Athletes in Recovery Facebook page. You can find me at Behavioral Health of the Palm Beaches website, and that's bhpalmbeach.com. And, there is hope, and we can help. That's all I can say. And also, I always want to speak to families, because I believe that when families get well, addicts and alcoholics get well. And those are the people that I want to help through this process and help them to learn the boundaries. And I want them to get their lives back, because once they get their lives back, then we as addicts and alcoholics get well.
Well, Randy, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come on and tell your story and be a part of the show. I hope you'll come back. There's so much more we'd like to get into with you and just don't have time tonight. I hope you'll come back and join us again sometime, because, what you're doing is so vitally important. And again, partnering with the NFL Alumni Association and talking to so many peers, I think it's just fantastic, because so many guys are suffering the way you did.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity, guys. Anytime.
Appreciate it.
Take care, Randy. We'll catch up again soon. All the best to you and your family in between now and then.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Good night.
Take care, Randy. That is former Bucs Center Randy Grimes, and Bob, to read through his story and to see the things, that he was dealing with, and, the self-medicating piece, and the fact that, he was taking so many pills at some point. I think a nurse told him that, if it wasn't for how great a shape Randy was in, the amount of pills he was taking would have killed anybody else. So, and then to come back from all of that and now to, be helping his peers deal with that, get through it, and that sort of thing. And like you said, traveling the country and bringing guys back, it's fantastic work.
Yeah, it's quite the story, his career, Chris. When you talk about very good players who played on bad teams, that was him in a nutshell. I mean, he was considered a very, very good center. But if you look at those teams, Chris, in the 80s, they just were awful. I mean, Tampa Bay had no success and throughout his career. And again, you find yourself in your early 30s trying to look at a different lifestyle, and you're banged up beyond belief. It's something that none of us can put ourselves into. But I think of him, I think of Tony Collins, Chris. The things that they've done off the field don't even compare as far as when it comes to being totally successful and in tune with their what they really want to do with their life. It's just amazing that they've done so much off the field that trumps anything success that they've had on the field. And those two guys are just pretty much in the same boat. They're doing a lot to help people, and they would have it no other way.
Yeah, and to your point, Bob, and you've said it many times on the show, right? With guys like that we've had, like Randy and Tony and Tim Worley and EJ Jr., and the list goes on and on. The work that they're doing after their playing careers is 100 times more important than the things that they did on the field. And you've talked about that many times, and that certainly applies to Randy as well, and to Gay Culverhouse. God bless her, and we'll have Gay back on the show here before not too long, and hopefully we get the privilege of having Randy back on, like I say, again real soon as well.
Great.
All right, when Bob and I come back, we'll be turning on our Thursday Night Tailgate Spotlight on the Positive. And I think we heard one right here that needs to be on the Spotlight on the Positive here just a moment ago as well. So hear which players are doing great things in their communities. We'll talk about all of that, then we'll wrap up the show, and we'll do that on the other side of these words about our friends at Kyvan Foods and the Salt Creek Golf Retreat.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcon tight end. And I'm the owner of Kyvan Foods. And if you enjoy delicious food, you're going to love my Kyvan products, which consist of our honey apple salsa, sweet barbecue sauce, and an array of seasonings. For store locations, online orders, and recipes, check out our website at www.kyvan82.com. That's KYVAN 82.com. One taste, and you'll appreciate the goodness.
If you're looking for a great place for your annual golf outing, a weekend golf getaway, or just a round of golf with your buddies, then Salt Creek Golf Retreat is just what you're looking for. Centrally located in Nashville, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis and west of Cincinnati, this challenging but fair 18-hole golf course appeals to all skill levels, and its scenic views of rolling hills and tree-lined fairways are sure to make golfing memories for years to come. Owned and operated by former Purdue and New York Giant fullback Randy Manier, Salt Creek Golf Retreat offers stay-and-play packages that include golf and a fully furnished 1- or 2-bedroom condo. After your round, be sure to stop by the 19th Hole Sports Bar and Restaurant for great food, fun, and drinks. Randy and his staff will treat you like family. For more information, log on to saltcreekgolf.com. That's saltcreekgolf.com. Or give them a call at 812-558-5944. Salt Creek Golf Retreat. Start making your golfing memories today.
Thursday Night Tailgate, where the spotlight is always on the positive. Tune in Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time to hear your favorite NFL legends, players, and coaches sharing their stories. Now back to Chris and Bob.
I wouldn't joke about anything else that happened here tonight.
And we are back here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and we're turning on our spotlight on the positive. Bob, who do you have for us this week?
Well, Chris, so many teams in the NFL do some great things as a team, but I'm doing some research this week, and pretty much nobody can outperform the New Orleans Saints when it comes to giving back, Chris. They're right at the top. They're very, very involved, of course, in the Play 60 program, which is basically aimed at getting kids off their rear ends and really active. And they do it as good as anybody. They're really big on that. And but they do a lot of things, Chris. Just recently, I'm reading about some of the things. A bunch of the players went to a local bowling alley and were bowling with Special Olympians. Great story. And just this past Tuesday, 2 days ago, two of the players, Teron Armstead and Mark Ingram, they actually did this on their own. Just the two of them, Chris. They actually bought 3 rookies with them, but the two of them organized for 200 backpacks to be given away to school children down that way. And there's actually a YouTube video of them doing it. I would urge people to check it out. It'll bring tears to your eyes. Just the two of them meeting and talking to these kids. And they had a ton of different type of backpacks, SpongeBob, things like that. They would ask the kids, what do you like? What do you like? And the kids would tell them, and they would give them one of the choices of backpacks. It was incredible. The two of them did it out of their own money, Chris, and all that. And but they do a ton of things. Again, like we said, they big with the Girls and Boys Club. They recently gave $50,000 to a local chapter there. But I can go on and on about the youth programs and community things that they do. But the Saints are right at the top of the list. We hear a lot about Drew Brees, but that entire team is locked in. So kudos to them.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great story, Bob. And, Bob, this week I want to put the spotlight on former Rams center Jason Brown. And I don't know if you've seen the story, but back in 2009, he had signed a 5-year, $37.5 million deal with the Rams, making him the highest-paid center in the league at the time. He ended up playing 3 seasons under that contract before he got released in 2012, and at that point he had earned about $25 million. And after being released, Bob, he had gotten interest from numerous other teams. He got an offer from the Baltimore Ravens, but instead of taking that offer, he chose to walk away from the game, retiring to become a farmer, Bob, to help feed people that are less fortunate than he is. And his agent told him, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. And he said, no, I'm not. And so what he did is he went and he bought 1,000 acres in Lewisburg, North Carolina, and started a farm called First Fruits Farm. Plus, he also started a nonprofit organization called Wisdom for Life, which you can find online at wisdomforlife.org. Now, he had no idea, Bob, how to be a farmer. Never done anything like that in his life. Didn't know how to grow crops. Didn't know how to plow fields. He taught himself all of that stuff by watching videos on YouTube, if you can believe it. And now, what he grows, right? The things that he grows, he gives it all away, Bob, to food pantries and organizations like, Society for St. Andrew, which helps feed the needy, and you can find them online at endhunger.org. So, Bob, he gave away 46,000 pounds of sweet potatoes back in the fall of 2015, 117,000 pounds of cucumbers back in 2014. He's got his next great harvest coming up on Saturday, October the 7th, and they, always need volunteers to help, harvest this year's crop. So if you're interested in doing something like that for our listeners, please go be a part of it. You can find information about that online at wisdomforlife.org. So, Bob, I want to, kudos to Jason Brown for simply an amazing story about a guy who, he felt moved. I'm gonna walk away from the game. I'm gonna buy this land. I'm gonna learn how to grow crops. I'm gonna learn how to be a farmer. I'm gonna learn how to do all of those things because he felt so strongly about feeding the hungry and taking care of folks that are less fortunate than him. So again, great job out of Jason Brown and the great things that he is doing for the community, up in and around North Carolina.
That is an amazing story, Chris. So many guys can just write out a check and do it like that. But to go out of your comfort zone in order to help people and to make it a long-lasting thing, that is beyond a good story. So kudos to him. And every guy that we feature here They all deserve it, Chris. They're the real heroes off the field or on the field. Those are the real heroes. This last segment we do every week.
Yes, I agree with that, Bob, and definitely the stories that need to get more publicity. All right, Bob, time for us to put a bow on this episode of Thursday Night Tailgate. We want to send out our thanks again to Rico Petrocelli, Tony Collins, Nick Ferguson, Randy McMichael, and Randy Grimes for joining us tonight. And like I say every week, Bob, the greatest thrill of all is getting to spend my Thursday nights with you, my friend.
I had a blast, Chris. That was a good mix of old friends and a new one. So what are we doing next week? Tell me.
Yeah, so next week we'll be welcoming back former Rams linebacker and Super Bowl hero Mike Jones to the show, as well as former Jets and Chiefs offensive lineman Jeff Criswell. Our good friend and former Dolphins All-Pro defensive end Marco Coleman will be here. And, of course, Tony Collins, who joins us every single week, will be with us as well. So we've got another great show lined up for you next week. We hope you'll come back and be a part of it with us. On social media, how can you stay up to date with the things we're doing? Well, first of all, on Facebook, we've got a show page, Thursday Night Tailgate. Please give us a like. That's important to us. Plus, Bob and I, we have our own individual pages on Facebook as well. Please also check us out online at ThursdayNightTailgate.com. From there, you'll be able to see who some of our future guests are going to be. Plus, you can stream or download any of our archive episodes for free on our site as well. On Twitter, I am at CT Mascaro. Bob is at Bob_Lazarian. The show is at TNT Podcast. Plus, you can also stream us online. You can find us on TuneIn. You can find us on Podbean. We really appreciate the support our good friends over at Podbean have given us, making us a recommended show both online and on their mobile app as well. And if you love listening to podcasts, please check them out. Podbean has got, they've got great podcasts from across all kinds of genres. So anything that you're looking for, you're going to be able to find on Podbean as well. So you can take those podcasts, our podcast, with you everywhere you go on your smartphone as well if you download the Podbean app. Bob, take us home, my friends.
All right, thanks. Look forward to it, Chris, next week. Many thanks go out to our announcer, Joe LaGenusa, for the great job he does with our weekly intro and ads, and to James Brocato and all the guys from Painted Faces for the upcoming outro music. On behalf of myself and Chris, we thank everyone tonight for listening. We appreciate you the most. Until next week, good night, Kevin. We miss you.